The Yearbook is a collection of Seth Rogen's most humorous experiences, mishaps, and adventures during his time as a Jewish kid in Canada, a stand-up comedian, and as a celebrity over the years. Although he is best known for his comic roles, Rogen is more than a comedy star. As a child in Vancouver, Seth Rogen had supportive parents who encouraged him to pursue his dream of becoming a stand-up comic. When he was 12, he began enrolling in stand-up comedy workshops, where he would perform nights at a local lesbian bar. In his early days of comedy, Rogen learned that comedy wasn't supposed to be about something you liked. People were primarily interested in hearing about subjects they disliked or sought to change. Rogen used the time he spent with his grandparents, whom he disliked spending time with, as potential comedy material as he became more adept at performing stand-up routines. With time, he gradually became aware of how much his grandparents loved him and grew to love them just as much. Rogen's father was a generous man who took pride in what he did to help others rather than in the work he did. A quality Rogen wished he had inherited. He was very close to his mother, which is typical for Jews. Jewish kids often have their bar and bat mitzvahs at age 13. When Rogen was 13, he attended about 60 bar and bat mitzvah parties. For him, this was a great chance to get a girlfriend, which he thought would help him prepare for high school the following year. The 60 bar and bat mitzvahs that Rogen attended were all dressed to impress, which Rogen thought meant vests. The vests unfortunately did nothing to help Rogen as a shy, awkward kid. As Rogen watched the other kids dance, he also noticed two other boys standing on the sidelines. By choice, Evan Goldberg and Sammy Fogel became his first friends. Despite not having a girlfriend at the time, he entered high school with his best friends. High school was spent hanging out outside the local 7-Eleven. In addition to smoking weed there, Rogen went to parties to get drunk. Both of which he did frequently. Rogen was 13 when he tried weed for the first time. With his friends, he smoked it down in the local ravine from a bong and got very high. Rogen didn't have money, so he typically bought weed at a lower price and then distributed it to his friends. As a result of his involvement in the drug trade during the summer of 9th grade, Rogen became a drug dealer. Rogen got a chance to audition for Canada's biggest comedy festival, Just for Laughs, in Los Angeles. Suddenly, Jerry Seinfeld showed up for a surprise routine while Rogen was waiting for his spot. Rogen failed miserably. Upon his return to Vancouver, an improv comedian told Rogen not to talk about everyday problems and instead to talk about his own struggles as a 16-year-old. It hadn't occurred to Rogen, but after he did that, he found that writing and telling jokes became easier. As a young man, Rogen fired his manager, Ray. The show he was going to star in, Freaks and Geeks, had just been cancelled. Ray got angry when he discovered he was being fired at the high-end restaurant where they were dining. During his career, Rogen has worked with a handful of porn actors and actresses, especially when shooting nude scenes, and each time has been a great experience. The adult stars are often thrilled to work on a comedy film and are not averse to getting naked in it. Ben visited Rogen in Amsterdam when he was 19. Rogen got high at a nearby weed cafe as soon as he arrived at the designated meeting spot a few hours earlier than planned. They planned on going to the Vincent van Gogh Museum the next day, getting high at another cafe, and watching a live sex show. In the midst of a sex show, Rogen's friend forced him to volunteer, which resulted in him removing his shirt to hysterical laughter from the audience. The next day, Rogen and his friend consumed more mushrooms than they ever imagined possible. Then he puked on some unsuspecting pedestrians while his friend ran back to his hostel to hide in his bed. They left Amsterdam the following day. In 2001, Rogen walked away from stand-up comedy after 2 failed television shows. Although he was good enough to keep doing it, he wasn't great enough to leave an impression. This led him to audition for movies and TV shows. In 2004, Rogen and Goldberg were hired to write for Da Ali G show. He met his future wife, Lauren Miller, through some co-workers at the show. Despite their differences, they are married today thanks to her smarts, humor, and beauty. In the year 2012, Rogen and Goldberg met Steven Spielberg and George Lucas, 2 of their biggest idols. The first thing Lucas asked was if they were prepared for the world to end that year. It took a while for them to figure out that Lucas was being serious. After Lucas left, Spielberg, Rogen, and Goldberg discussed the idea of creating a film about a boy whose skill at playing video games makes him crucial to the survival of humanity. There are parallels between this plot and The Last Starfighter, which debuted in 1984. Early on in the production of Green Hornet, Rogen was told to cooperate with Nicolas Cage in order for the film to be made, regardless of Cage's request to paint his character's head with tattoos or to portray him as a white Jamaican. Rogen and Cage had a very awkward first meeting when Cage started speaking with his Jamaican accent. After a few years, they reconnected and the Jamaican accent was immediately mentioned by Cage. Once again, the meeting ended awkwardly. Eventually, Green Hornet did manage to make it to the big screen. However, it received very poor reviews. Rogen is not fond of meeting incredibly famous people. As with many people outside of Hollywood, meeting the famous causes him anxiety and sweats. One of his most strange encounters was with Tom Cruise, who tried to convince him of the virtues of Scientology. In the world of entertainment, musicians are a completely different breed from actors because they have complete control over who surrounds them. In one of the Grammy Awards shows, Rogen was asked by Eminem to introduce him. Just before Rogen was due to do the introduction, he ran up to greet Beyoncé. As he attempted to get close, a security guard blocked him, spilling his drink all over him. One of Rogen's easiest films to make was The Interview. In response to the trailer's international release, North Korea declared that releasing the film would constitute an act of war. Even with all the controversy surrounding the film, test audiences enjoyed it and had high hopes for a good opening weekend. The film was instead pulled from theaters, releasing only on digital platforms, and was heavily criticized by critics and comedians alike. One scene in The Interview features Rogen getting tackled by a tiger. As they did not have the budget to create a convincing CGI tiger, they decided to hire a real one from a trainer named Randy. The plan was for Randy to be Rogen's body double. Instead, Randy gained excessive weight, so Rogen had to be with the actual tiger in the scene. Fortunately, the tiger listened to Randy's commands and was cool, calm, and cooperative. Besides the tiger, Rogen got lost on a hike at camp, and that was one of the closest encounters with death he had. Rogen remembers firing a flare to warn nearby boats, even though his group was eventually saved by local firefighters. Anticlimactic was the best way to describe the outcome. As a kid, Rogen heard plenty of anti-Semitic jokes from his friends, but it wasn't until he was in his 20s that he realized how widespread they were, even in Hollywood. The first time Rogen played a real person in a film was in Jobs, as Steve Wozniak, the creator of the personal computer. During filming, Wozniak and Rogen became good friends, and following the release of their film, they went to the Magic Castle together. Magic Castle is a Hollywood Hills social club that caters predominantly to magicians. Wozniak was hailed as the greatest nerd of all time by tons of fans. Rogen was amazed as Wozniak rode a Segway home after watching magic shows for 5 hours. Almost immediately after Rogen joined Twitter, he was bombarded by white supremacists, many of whom had Twitter-verified accounts. He then had a conversation with Twitter's CEO Jack Dorsey. Dorsey was non-committal with his answers to his questions, complaints, and concerns, which only enraged him more. In California, Rogen decided to try acid with his friends while on a trip to Joshua Tree at the age of 36. He had often heard horror stories about acid getting into people's eyes or tearing at their skin because they saw spiders. In Rogen's opinion, the only time you can truly enjoy a drug is when you're so high. The next year, he did exactly that at Burning Man, a massive arts festival in the desert. The use of drugs allows Rogen to gain insight into his thinking, feeling, and behavior in a way that is impossible in a normal environment. A bonus is that they're a ton of fun. The life of Seth Rogen has been extremely adventurous, from performing stand-up routines at lesbian clubs at age 12 to taking way too many mushrooms in Amsterdam and creating a film that ended up creating tension between the United States and North Korea. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy this video, please make sure to drop a like and subscribe to my channel.